Today's story is about a woman who is believed to be the catalyst for something that happens far too often in today's time. But before we get into that, I want to thank you for stopping by my channel, aka my dark library. And if you enjoy hearing about the dark side of humanity, then please subscribe and stick around for a while. Now, without further ado, let's jump right into today's story. Our story starts back in the 1960s with a girl named Brenda Spencer. Brenda was born on April 3rd, 1962 in San Diego, California to Wallace and Dot Spencer, and she had two older siblings, and altogether, Brenda had a pretty normal childhood. Things would take a turn for the worst, however, in the 1970s when Dot discovered that her husband Wallace had been running around on her with multiple women. She filed for divorce, and in 1972 it was finalized, but she didn't get custody of any of the children. Instead, the courts awarded full custody to their now emotionally distant father, Wallace, and it was soon after that that the Brenda that was energetic and happy disappeared, and a new troubled Brenda stood in her place. After the divorce, Brenda and her siblings would live in poverty with their father. They moved into a house located on Lake Alton Drive, which was located in the neighborhood of San Carlos. And the once nice home that they moved into would turn into basically a landfill. All the floors and countertops throughout the home would be littered with trash of all kinds, as well as empty alcohol bottles, like a ton of empty alcohol bottles. And it was just a real shame to see children growing up in that environment. I mean, the laundry wasn't being done, the dishes weren't being done. It was just terrible. As for the sleeping arrangements, it's believed that the two older children, they had their own space until eventually they moved out. As for Brenda, though, she was forced to sleep with her father on a mattress on the floor surrounded by all this trash up until the age of 16. As the years went on, Brenda's mental health got worse. She began drinking alcohol, doing drugs, and committing crimes such as theft, and she showed major hostility towards law enforcement. She would even go around and tell anyone that would listen that she actually shot a cop one time, which, by the way, completely false. There's no record anywhere showing that she did this, and she was actually known to make up these kind of crazy stories to make herself seem like this big, bad, crazy person, which is what she wanted. She would even tell people that one day she would do something so big, so crazy and bad that she would be famous worldwide for it. Brenda also hated school and showed absolutely no interest in it at all. She would hardly show up to class, and when she did show up, she just stayed spaced out a majority of the time until eventually she was sent to a facility for troubled youths due to her truancy. And it was at this facility that Brenda would open up to staff, and she would let them know that she was actually extremely suicidal and depressed. And when the staff took this information back to her parents, including her mother, who had been out of her life since the divorce, nothing happened. The parents, they didn't care, they showed no interest, and they just shrugged it off, and they continued to let Brenda do whatever she wanted to do, and things just got way worse from there. In the summer of 1978, Brenda got arrested for theft and for shooting out the windows of Grover Cleveland Elementary School, which was located directly across the street from her house. She did this with a BB gun, and the community around her, they weren't surprised that this happened at all. See, Brenda was known to walk throughout the neighborhood with this BB gun, shooting at birds and killing them, and they knew her reputation, and in all honesty, they assumed that something like this was going to happen sooner or later. So the fact that she did this to the elementary school surprised nobody. Brenda was placed on probation due to this, and in December of 1978, her probation officer arranged the psychiatric evaluation to be done on her. And after this evaluation, it was recommended to her father that she be placed in a mental health facility to deal with her depression. But after Wallace heard this, he didn't care. He refused to do it, and instead he went out and he bought her a .22 caliber rifle with a telescopic scope and 500 rounds of ammo for Christmas. And Brenda would go on to say later that it was as if he wanted her to harm herself, because on that particular year for Christmas, she asked for a radio, and instead he went out and bought her a rifle with a crap ton of ammo. On January 29th, 1979, which was a Monday, Brenda, who was now 16 years old and a junior in high school, decided to do her normal thing and just skip school so she could stay home and drink and watch TV. And as she was doing this, she heard a familiar sound outside. That sound was of children laughing as they stood outside the gates of Grover Cleveland Elementary and waited in line for their principal, Burton Ragg, to let them in. Brenda decided to go look out the window on this particular day so she could watch as the kids went into the school. And as she was standing there watching them, she got this idea that she believed was finally big enough to get her on TV and possibly make her famous worldwide. So she left the window, ran to her room. She picked up the rifle that her dad got her for Christmas, and then she ran back to the window where she was standing there watching the kids. She slid the window up, and then with the rifle, she took aim at the children as they were now entering the gates of the school. As Brenda looked through the scope of her rifle at the children, she eventually fixated on 9-year-old Cam Miller. He was entering the school and he was wearing blue, and because he was wearing the color blue, which was Brenda's favorite color, she decided that he would be her first victim. So she pulled the trigger and fired her first round into the back of 9-year-old Cam Miller. And as that round exited through his chest and he fell onto the ground, all chaos erupted as Brenda continued firing multiple shots at the children and anyone else that would get in her way. The shooting went on for 20 minutes until police finally blocked her line of sight by moving a garbage truck in front of the school's entrance, forcing Brenda to stop and barricade herself inside. But by the time police stopped her, Brenda had already caused a massive amount of damage. Brenda had shot a total of 11 people. 8 children, including 9-year-old Cam Miller, and 1 police officer named Robert Robb would survive their injuries. As for Principal Burton Ragg and school custodian Mike Suture, they would sadly pass away before help could arrive after they both threw themselves in harm's way to try and save as many children as possible. Law enforcement surrounded Brenda's house and negotiations began for her to come out. And it was during these negotiations that a news reporter would be going through a phone book calling all the homes that were up and down Lake Alton Drive, trying to find which house Brenda was in. And eventually, Brenda picked up the phone whenever that reporter called. And when she did, she asked Brenda why she was doing this, and Brenda replied to her saying, quote, "I don't like Mondays, and this livens up the day." After nearly 7 hours of negotiating and multiple threats from Brenda saying she'd come out shooting, Brenda Spencer finally surrendered peacefully to the promise of a Burger King Whopper meal, and the chaos she had created finally came to an end. Brenda was taken into custody and later charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder and 9 counts of attempted murder, but she wanted to go to trial. She instead took a plea deal, which resulted in her being charged with the 2 counts of first-degree murder and assault with a deadly weapon, with the 9 counts of attempted murder being dropped. She would be sentenced to 25 to life, with the possibility of parole. Brenda Spencer now resides in the California Institute for Women, and she has been denied parole 5 times, with her latest denial being in 2022, where she was told she could not reapply for 3 years. So she'll be able to be back up for parole sometime next year in 2025. Brenda's name would end up becoming known worldwide after Bob Geldof, the then lead singer of Boomtown Rats, would write a song named after her infamous phrase she told a reporter the day of the shooting. The name of the song was "I Don't Like Mondays," and it became a major hit. And Brenda, she would even write Bob and tell him that she was glad she did what she did because he made her famous just like she always wanted to be. And Bob would go on to say later in an interview that that's not a good thing to live. Now, it was said that Brenda Spencer was the first ever school shooter in American history, which isn't true. The actual first school shooting in the United States of America was recorded all the way back in the 1700s. There have since been dozens of school shootings since then, all throughout the 1800s, the early 1900s, 1950s, 60s, and even in the 70s before Brenda. But what she is known as is the first female school shooter, and she's believed to be, even by people today, the one that laid the foundation for the modern day school shootings that we have to deal with in today's time. And that's it for today's story. I really hope y'all enjoyed it. If you stuck around all the way here to the end, then thank you. I'm glad you enjoyed listening to this story. Please like the video, jump in the comments, let me know what you think. And while you're at it, subscribe and stick around for more tales just like this one. Now, y'all get out of here. Go enjoy your day. I have to go find another story for next week. And I will see you guys and gals later.